Good afternoon, everyone. I think before Joanne and Arjun leave the stage, if you can have one more very loud clap. B-Girl Joe and B-Boy Joon, two of the premier breakdancers in our country today. Thanks so much, guys. I think you need to. So I have been given the daunting task of waking everyone up after a hearty lunch, and I'm hoping to do that. And the way I'm hoping to do that is just by kind of taking you through a project that we have at Meraki and at SSA called Sports of the Future. It's a unique idea that we kind of thought about and structured, and we thought we'd kind of share that with you and take you through it. So fundamentally, my task today is to attempt to predict the future as accurately as the Simpson writers, who are notorious for getting it spot on. I apologize for the fonts. Those are not actually the fonts of my PPT, but so what exactly will the future look like? From a non-sporting perspective, if RBI allowed international payments, hopefully it'll look something like this. But what has happened is that we've had a new cohort taking emergence, and this cohort is affectionately known as the Gen Zs. And the Gen Zs come with their very own set of interests and their very own set of passions. And these have impacted the sports that are being consumed and how they're being consumed. And what we're seeing is that newer sports are coming into the forefront, whilst traditional sports are kind of are taking a back foot. And it's something that the IOC themselves have woken up to give, particularly because of the dropping viewership of certain sporting disciplines. And what the IOC has attempted to do is kind of bring these sports into the Olympics so that they can attract this newer, younger audience that is the Gen Zs. So if we were to talk about kind of which are the sports that are going to become big in the future, everyone knows about esports. There are conferences held every single day in this country about esports. But I want to kind of just take you through a few that you might not know of, or might not even know are Olympic sports. And some of these actually include breakdancing, what you guys witnessed right now. Breakdancing is scheduled to make its debut at the Paris 24 Olympics. Surfing, which made its debut at Tokyo. Skateboarding, again, made its debut at Tokyo. And sport climbing, much like the other two, made its debut at Tokyo. Whilst I don't have enough time to kind of show you how each of these sports look, I just thought it'd be cool to show you how one of these sports look.
At your marks. Ready?
Go! Come on, boy, show us what you got. We're moving as fast as lightning in the close race. Patrick Leonardo takes apparently 5.208 seconds.
If I'm not mistaken,
You are not mistaken, Alex Johnson breaking the world record.
the second time today.
So that is a discipline of climbing called speed climbing, and it's one of the disciplines that's there in the Olympics. So just to kind of give you an overview of the current landscape of these four sports, I'll first start with breaking, what you guys kind of saw Joanne and Arjun perform. A very cool story that I have is in 2019, I was in Chennai and I was actually there with Abhinav Bindra, and we were in a cab going for a meeting. And in that cab, Abhinav told me that, Toshan, I'd actually kind of gone to the Youth Olympics in 2018. And do you know which sport over there had the most attendance? And I had no clue. And he said it was breakdancing. There were around 13,000 people per day at the breakdancing event at the Youth Olympics. It was the event that had the most attendance in Buenos Aires. It is a sport that, as I mentioned, is going to make its debut at the full Olympics in 2024, but there is a structure that exists within India itself as well. There is a federation that governs it. Johanna, who performed here, is one of the best break dancers in the country. She's won 2 Red Bull BC 1 tournaments, and there's real talent within the country, and whilst many of us might not know about it, it is something that will be coming into the forefront once the Olympic Games come in. The second sport is skateboarding. Fun fact about skateboarding, if you looked at the women's discipline, so skateboarding has 2 disciplines. There is park and street. Park is your bowl event where you have that curved bowl and you try get momentum and you do all of those flips. And street is when you have to kind of do these obstacles on the stairs and it looks as if it's a street. If you look at both the park and street events at Tokyo 2020 for the women's event, the average age of the 6 women on the podium was 14 and a half years. The gold medalist is 13 years old. So it's not just a sport that is consumed visually by the Gen Zs, it is also a sport that is mastered by them as well. Skateboarding, very similar to breakdancing, is a subculture in itself. The communities within India where it started off as a hobby and has kind of slowly evolved into a subculture and now a culture in itself. Even if you look at skateboarding globally, that's how skateboarding kind of started. Very similar to breakdancing, there is a structured federation that is aiming to promote the sport. And interestingly enough, what's happening is the sport is growing beyond just the metros as well. So you have quite a few emerging Indian cities that are having these subcultures sprouting of skateboarding. Surfing for me is very, very interesting because what not many people know is that India has one of the longest coastlines, continuous coastlines in the world, of around 7,500 kilometers, or 7,516 kilometers to be exact. But despite this, water sports isn't something that's very popular in India, and that's something that surfing is hoping to kind of overcome. And they're doing this through many tournaments and competitions that happen in India. One of the most prevalent and premier ones is the Kovalam Classics that happen down south. And again, structured system with the federation, hoping to get our athletes to international tournaments. Sport climbing actually is a sport that we at Meraki have had a personal kind of involvement with in India. Sport climbing globally is actually one of the fastest growing sports in the world. This also happens because of the fact that climbing is increasingly becoming a fitness activity where people are choosing to join a climbing gym as opposed to going to a regular gym. And what this has led to is a mushrooming of climbing gyms across the world, India included, and the sport, therefore, is growing. Globally, it is governed by the International Federation of Sport Climbing, and India, it's governed by the Indian Mountaineering Foundation. And what you guys saw on the screen with the video was the speed discipline, but sport climbing has 3 different disciplines: lead, speed, and bouldering. Lead is basically how high you can climb up the wall. Speed is how fast you can climb up the wall. And bouldering is a very interesting one. It's fundamentally puzzle solving. The name bouldering is derived from the word boulder, where you try to climb a boulder or a rock. And those are the 3 disciplines that are also there in the Olympics. Rock climbing as an activity is something that has a very, very rich legacy in India as well, with Hampi being a hotspot for not just climbers from India, but internationally as well. And the reason why I said we as Meraki have had a role in sport climbing is because not many people know that India has actually hosted 2 World Cups in sport climbing in 2016 and 2017 in the bouldering category. And we had the privilege of working with those 2 World Cups. Just wanted to quickly show you what happened at one of these World Cups. So this is bouldering. So why are we making this prediction that we believe sports like these 4 are going to be sports of the future? Is because we believe that they are at the epicenter of what makes this Gen Z cohort tick, and it fulfills the desires of this particular audience. The first one being experiential. From the videos that you guys have seen, from the performances that you've seen here, it's very engaging. It is a very, very immersive experience as an audience member, and that's a particular quality that Gen Zs are seeking out. They are looking to have these immersive experiences, and all these sports provide it. The second thing is that they are very interconnected with lifestyle. They're more than just, I'm going to go out and play this particular sport. It is who you are, it is what you do. And this particular aspect makes it very, very appealing. And it gives these Gen Zs a particular kind of badge to say that, you know what, I belong to this particular tribe, or I'm part of this community, something that they hold in high regard, because social equity is a very tradable currency for them. The third being that it is inclusive. These sports are inclusive. There are very few boundaries, whether socio-economical or geographical. Well, for surfing, the obvious thing is water, but they are, in the most part, very, very inclusive sports, and that kind of makes it very appealing to a wider range of individuals that want to take up the sports. And therein lies the sweet spot as to why we believe sports like these four are going to kind of really come into the forefront in the next decade or so. But it's just not about kind of having these sports be very entertaining and visually captivating to watch. But these sports also leave a very tangible impact on society. And they do so in India specifically as well, where these communities exist. And I just want to share a few of these stories about how these sports have actually done so. One of India's premier breakdancers is Ramesh Yadav, or B-Boy Tornado. And he comes from a part of Mumbai called Mankhurd. And in his own words, he kind of calls it a social prism. It's an area which is looked down upon by those that do not belong there. And there's a very large breakdancing community that exists in that particular environment. And what they've kind of come to realize is that by them going out and competing under the Indian flag and being the best athletes that they can be, they're driving pride not just back to themselves, but to the society that they belong to. So every single child who's coming from the society that they're coming from feels a little bit better about where they're from. The self-esteem of this child is grown. If you take surfing, for example, in Tamil Nadu, there is a school of surfing called Mumu Surf School. It's been operational, I think, for about 11 years. And the reason why this surf school actually exists is because Mumu, the founder of the surf school, realized that the local fisherman community over there used to kind of take up alcohol and drink quite a bit of alcohol as a method of, to become as a painkiller, kind of just to numb their senses because of the precarious nature of their profession. And he said, you know what, we have a coastline, we have the waves, why not surf? So the children of these fishermen are someone that he took in and kind of started coaching in surfing. And the location became a very popular surfing location as well, where you had surfers from all over the world coming and participating and kind of trying to ride the waves over there. And then these kids, not just were they surfing to compete, but they actually started becoming instructors and they created a livelihood which was previously not there. Very similar with skateboarding in Sikkim, where drug use was particularly high amongst the community. Skateboarding proved to be a salvation. Tenzing Bhutia, who is a competitive skateboarder for India, was, according to his admission, previously addicted to drugs. And what kind of really got him through was the community that he was a part of, which was a skateboarding community. And the sport in Sikkim is actually kind of empowering communities that might be vulnerable to vices like drug abuse and alcohol, and uplifting them. Sometimes there are very, very powerful stories that come from these sports. Shivani Charak is one of India's best climbers. And at the age of 9, she got cancer and she beat cancer, and she's a cancer survivor. And fast forward 11 years, today she's one of the country's best sport climbers. Very inspirational, powerful stories that can serve as motivators to everyone. I am a sport marketeer, so anything I do has to be kind of figuring out how do I allow the sports to be sustainable, and for them to be sustainable, you need sponsor and brand support. And that's kind of the idea behind how do we get more brands to support and partner with these sports of the future. And I think at a very macro level, if you kind of look at the impact and investment involved with participating in these sports at a brand level, very low investment, very high impact. And that immediately becomes a very attractive opportunity for brands. But if I am a brand that wishes to partner with any of these sports, what do I actually get? What is it that I'm actually going to be able to do if I've partnered with any of these sports or all of these sports? And if you can kind of break it up, the first thing is that you guys saw Johanna and Arjun, you guys saw the videos. They're very visually stunning, visually captivating sports. And in this creator economy that we're in today, what most brands are looking for is a very rich content bank that allows them to tell the story of their brand. And that's exactly what these sports provide them. Whether it be athlete stories or just the competitions themselves, they have access to a potentially rich content bank. Fantastic on-ground opportunities. I'm hoping at least all of you are captivated by the performances, and just imagine kind of going to a breakdancing competition and watching these athletes compete. It provides a great platform for brands to kind of speak directly to their consumers. And at the same time, also engage their stakeholders beyond the consumers. And finally, it allows them to kind of talk about who they are as a brand, talk about their values, and position themselves as a forward-thinking and future-ready brand. So whenever I kind of go to brands and kind of talk to them about sports of the future, I tell them that the possibilities are endless. Now, whilst I'm not sure whether technology will in the future be so great that it'll allow us to have data in a closed room like this, but the one thing that I'm confident about is that sports like these four are going to be in the forefront of the Olympics and mainstream culture as well. Thank you very much. Also for questions, if I can just get Johanna and Arjun also on stage. If there are any technical questions, they will answer it and not me. Johanna, Arjun? Questions? I think there's one there. Is there a mic? Yes. I think it might be better if we just wait for the mic.
So a couple of questions. One, Toshan, is for you. These are great sports. Even I've tried bouldering and my ankle is still recovering from that. But so what about indigenous sports? You know, like this, there's this sport in coastal Karnataka called Kambla, which now has gained prominence because of this movie. I happened to visit there. Now it's a wonderful sport which is not being, there's no marketing of that, right? Even snakeboard races that we see in Kerala, and Malkham and all the other sports which are anyway tied to India's traditions but lack the whole marketing and sort of branding aspect of it. What's your thought about that as a sport which comes from the past but also is a sport for the future? That's one. And second is for the dancers. I mean, great performance. My question again to you guys is, how do you judge in the Olympics, right? You're dancing as an art form. So can you just take us through the judging of these events and how that plays out?
Before they answer that and before I answer the question, that's exactly why I asked them to come on stage, because I predicted someone is going to ask that question and I would not have the answer. So I'll let them go first.
So we'll both answer your question, but
so for the Olympics, they have a judging system, and it's based on 3 different criteria: the mental, physical, and spiritual part of dancing. Okay, so mental involves how creative you are with the moves that there are some basic moves which, I mean, obviously as a new audience, you won't be able to tell what forms a part of breaking, but there are like foundational things, like with any other sport, you know. So what can you do to make the foundational things look different? That's part of the mental aspect. Then there are two in each of these, right? One is that. The other part of the mental thing is the way you create a story for the people watching, right? If you notice, like when we perform, it's not like we just sit and start doing something and then get up. There's like a thread of story running through the whole performance, right? So even in a breakdancing competition, judges look at these criteria.
The
This is-
beginning, middle, and end.
yeah, the
structure.
beginning, middle, and end. What story you're telling? Does everything tie together well? Things like that. Okay, that is the mental aspect of breaking. On the physical side, they look at your technique. How clean are you when you're doing your moves? How well are you executing the things that you do? If you fall down, like there were a bunch of times we fell also while doing our stuff, like how quickly can you recover?
And they
You know?
count that as a crash. So that is the only place where you directly lose a few points. But otherwise,
Yeah.
it is quite subjective. And
Yeah, and technique sorry, I think I said technique. But like another aspect of the dance that you can look at is like the dynamic aspect, like how powerful do you look when you move? Physically, what impact are you creating? Like, you know, like how much energy are you putting out when you're dancing? That's the physical side. And finally, the spiritual side is your character when you dance. Like, are you present on the stage when you're dancing, or are you very subdued and your opponent looks a lot louder than you? And musicality, like, are you going with the flow of the music? Are you hitting the ups and downs? So it is a very complex system, and nowadays they've even introduced this exam for people who want to judge at the Olympics. It's a very difficult exam to pass, but yeah, it makes sure that the people judging are very aware of these criteria. And of course, like you said, it is a dance. So one advantage that I feel breaking has that can get more people into it is that, unlike a sport like swimming, which is very clear, you know, who wins, whoever reaches the end of the pool first wins for sure, right? But with breaking, there's no goal that you have to reach. So you don't have to be good at every single aspect of the dance to win a competition, which is the beautiful part about breaking, because there's no like, okay, you're really fit, so you're fit for breaking, and you're not, so you're not, you know, because there are other parts that matter, like how you interpret the music, how you create moves. And because it's a dance at the end of it, they can make it as objective as possible, but of course there's a human judging, and based on what they feel is happening, they will judge. So I feel like while it's not super scientific and accurate, it kind of creates more space for people to express themselves, rather than a sport which is just very clear, like who wins and who loses. I hope that kind of answers the
I think you
question.
said it all, but basically body, mind, and soul, and the interpretation of the music and the moment like holds as much weightage as the technicality and yeah, the physicality as well.
I think to your point about indigenous sports being the sports of the future, I think there are two fantastic case studies out there currently already, where indigenous Indian sports have become mainstream, with the PKL becoming the second largest league in the country, and the recently concluded Kho League as well. I think there is I think there's terrific merit behind kind of pursuing these sports at a commercial level. This particular kind of idea that I wanted to float across with you was slightly at a global level as well, at an Olympic level. Sports which the IOC kind of realized that, hey, you know what? We're losing an audience. How do we kind of get them? Oh, that's where the eyeballs are. And by no means do I mean that these are the only four sports. In 2016, BMX made its debut at the Rio Olympics. That again was brought in to increase the affinity that this younger cohort might share. In 2028, there is a discussion about parkour being in the games. It's all the steps that the biggest sporting event in the world is taking to kind of stay relevant. I don't want to put down any sports, but there are traditional legacy sports which don't get the viewership that the Olympics is hoping for, and hence why I just wanted to share with you a few sports at an Olympic level. But there is great merit pursuing thing. uh, indigenous sports. I think. Sorry, it's just.
Hi, good afternoon, sir. I appreciate the dancers. They really done fantastic job. The explanation given by also really very eye opening for all of us. My question is, as you just now told that some of the games is coming, they are going backseat. In the last year also, they have announced that this boxing is slowly removing from the Olympics. I hope you know about it. But what are the kind of games which are really, as per your perspective, that the games are going to be removed from the Olympic level? That is one. That is one. The second question is, see, WHO in 2016 announced that by 2030, India is going to be a hub of diabetics. So, is only for the championships and we are trying to prepare only champions, or is it really going to become a culture in India? Sporting is a culture, not just for the champions, not just for the winning medals. Did you see in your study how the sport is going to be in the coming future in India?
So just to answer your first question in terms of what sports will slowly be kind of weeded out, I think boxing, I think it's also has to do with the Amateur Boxing Federation globally and the issues over there. I don't want to get in trouble and say that this particular sport, I can give you my opinion, and my opinion is that there are a few sports that I don't ever tune in to watch at the Olympics. I'll definitely be watching 100 meters butterfly and 100 meters running or 200 meters hurdles, but there are other sports that I wouldn't necessarily watch. I think what the IOC are looking to do, and again, this is my opinion, is that they'll look at it very objectively from a viewership data perspective and see which are the ones that don't necessarily get in the eyeballs and see whether they can slowly kind of phase that out. Your second point about India having that sporting culture. So your point about diabetes, India is also leading it's very sad, but India is leading childhood diabetes as well. It's not just diabetes so it's the idea of India becoming a sporting nation is, I think, the reason why we have symposiums like this, and every single sport has its own role to play over there. But particularly with the 4 sports that I've shown over there, as I said, it's at the epicenter of the 3 things that drive the Gen Z cohort, one of them being lifestyle, right? It is not that I am going to go out and skateboard because I am going to compete in the Jugaad competition that happens in Bangalore. I might be skateboarding because that's what I enjoy doing. I might be taking a weekend off to go to Hampi to climb because that's what I want to do. It's a lifestyle choice, and I think sports like these, which have an element of it creeping into your lifestyle, goes a long way into creating that sporting culture that I think all of us here are trying to kind of imbibe within the nation. I think any other? Two.
So, Red Bull BC1 was introduced in India in 2015, and the women's category was in 2019. So that's one of the biggest competitions that happen in terms of like publicity and branding also. So after that competition, this usually covered in quite a few newspapers as well. But the Olympic events haven't got that much coverage because we're just still in the beginning phases. We've just had one national so far on the Olympic Federation side of things. So I guess there's a lot of room for it to grow in that space.
Can I just add one more thing? Also, within the community itself, we have a lot of people who sponsor dancers, other brands, they may not be sporting brands, but like she gets sponsored by some. What is that?
Well spun.
Yeah, but not just Wellspun, like even these other like food brands.
Yeah,
and
like
things
there are
that.
food brands that come in, like
Yeah.
Strive, or for peanut butters, this kind of
Yeah.
thing.
So I
Yeah,
feel
Joanne,
like
talk about all your sponsors.
They go-
We'll get more sponsors that way. Please.
so I feel like the community already has a very strong support system for the people who are doing well. But for it to become, as the previous gentleman said, like a lifestyle where everyone gets to do it for fun also, we do need sponsors from the mainstream companies
Media
and stuff,
companies.
That would be helpful.
Just before we take Paul's question, just to add one very quick.
I'll add one last thing. So it just popped into my mind that after breaking reached the Olympics, so different countries have been doing different things to bring up the awareness in their respective countries that, okay, this is the sport, this is how it's done, this is what's happening. So one country that I really like how they approached it is Korea. So they made an entire TV show with breakers so that, they have complete publicity. All the little national breakers are getting that publicity and coverage as well.
The one addition to that in terms of coverage, particularly from a journalistic perspective, is that, as I said, all four of these sports are very visually stunning, and they're it's very snackable content. And it's very snackable content because if you watch the sport on a mobile screen, you can still see what is happening, which might not be the case with sports like rugby and football, where you need a wider screen. So more than journalists, what's driving the viewership is the consumers themselves. They are going onto YouTube and kind of consuming these sports. Paul, I think yours is the last question, and then we'll.
So I'm looking at a commercial point from you. So what kind of a salary or a federation gives you something to travel, your daily allowance or anything is that from federation? And as well as how do you actually see financially this is viable for a dancer to get into international level? So is it any financial rewards except the basic sponsor if you have influencer in Instagram, you make it a basic sponsor. Other than that, is there anybody coming up and supporting the system?
So I'll answer the second part. First part, I'll have Johanna answer, but you want to get her in trouble, huh, Paul?
So it's such a relatively new sport globally, and in other countries there are already camps happening, and there is a structured way of going about finding the top dancers who are going to compete and represent. Our federation is still on the way to structuring how they're going to be supporting us. But in terms of the great thing about breaking is that we literally just need a good flow and good shoes. That's the main thing. We don't need that much equipment. But in terms of the salary coming in, I think more than to the dancers right now, it needs to go to the slightly older generation so we can have full-time coaches in the country. Then the dancers are able to access that. So I think that's important.
Like we have nothing.
It's a relatively new sport as well, Paul. And in terms of just one additional, in terms of commercialization, I think giving us the opportunity, like this forum of kind of sharing these things with you, we're just hoping that more brands are aware that sports like this exist, because at the end of the day, what you need is their investment. Once their investment comes in, then there is no ceiling. Thank you very much.